I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, December the 12th, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Macrocin is a bold, affordable telithromycin injection with no BS. Learn how it compared to Pioneer products on a 4,600 head trial by going to macrocin.com. Also, Joplin Regional Stockyards got a pretty good regular Monday feeder cattle auction for you here today on Monday. They'll be going good by 7 o'clock in the morning. Going to have around 7,000 head, including 40 loads of yearling feeders. Straight loads, guys. Also on Wednesday, the 14th, Joplin Regional Stockyards is going to have a special cow and bull sale. It's an afternoon sale. It'll be separate and after their weigh-up sale that they have on Wednesday morning. But starting at 4:30 in the afternoon, just the replacement types. They've got 600 cows with several complete dispersals. They've also got some breeding age bulls going to be on that sale too. So if you can't make it there, you can check them out on dvauction.com. Resiliency shows strength. We were getting kind of down in the dumps last week whenever we felt like we ought to be gaining ground, especially in your fat cattle market. Our calves were gaining ground. We saw our yearling feeders continue to sell well and a little bit higher, but we started selling some fat cattle lower midweek last week, and that's you know, from the outside looking in, very few people sell cattle in a negotiated manner. You know, there might be one handful in the Texas Panhandle, maybe one handful or a couple more in Kansas, and you know, there wouldn't be a bumper pull trailer load of cattle feeders up in the northern plains even that sell on a negotiated basis. There's just not that many of them. And so for those of us that are just watching the market, or those that are in some kind of a sweetheart deal, or not in the cattle feeding end of it at all, it gets very frustrating whenever you think that there should be ground to gain, and they start selling the cattle cheaper in the middle of a week leading up to Christmas, when you know your packers are aggressive to get as many cattle slaughtered as they can, because they're going into a period it's going to be holiday shutdowns and things like that. So it got kind of frustrating, and it had a lot of us, especially me, kind of shaking our head a little bit. But with competitive trading, partly with the Fed Cattle Exchange, you know, we saw somebody in the Texas Panhandle basis jump at 153 last week on a Wednesday. That was frustrating. But the next day on Fed Cattle Exchange, we started selling cattle at 154 and even 154 and a half. That made us feel a little bit better. The guys at the Consolidated Beef Producers that do the trading for several small independent feeders, and they try to pool their cattle to get a little bit more leverage, they kind of stuck their boots in the ground and decided they weren't going to take less than 155, which I was proud of them for doing that. And they ended up getting the 155 later in the week. Then we ended up getting 156 in the Southern Plains also later in the week. So, you know, that was great. And that just shows how whenever the feeders will work together and get bull-headed, whenever you know that you've got right for higher market, that it works out. And always, as we've been going up through this little rally we've been having for the last few months, always your highest prices are paid late in the week and on the best cattle. So if you've got cattle that deserve that, and late in the week, you know, dig in and you'll get what you want for those cattle. But I have to talk to you about U.S. Cattlemen's Association's annual meeting that I went to over the weekend in Nashville, Tennessee. Boy, did we have a good time. The biggest crowd that I've ever seen at one of those meetings, and I heard them say that it was the biggest attendance we'd ever had, partly because we got it out of the northern plains. It just seems like a long ways to Billings, Montana. It may not be that far, but for those of us that live down here in civilization, it seems like a long ways to Billings, Montana. and we've had them up there. We had it in Spearfish, South Dakota last year. We got a few more people to that, but having it in Nashville, it's a destination people want to go, and we got some people that didn't feel like they had to go so far out of their normal range to get to come to it. We had several speakers and presenters there. I mentioned Fed Cattle Exchange. We had them come in and talk to us about some new opportunities that they are looking at with the Fed Cattle Exchange that could be key in trying to get some more competitive negotiation in our fed cattle market, and maybe a way to use some of that money that the Biden administration has thrown at this industry, this meat industry, and not really sure what to do with it. But I think that would be a good deal. We had Trey Wasserberger from Sustainable Beef, the new packing plant that they're putting in North Platte, Nebraska. He gave a very interesting talk, and actually a kind of a moving talk, and I enjoyed it very much. I mean, he just told us from nuts to bolts, you know, what's going on, and it was very interesting. I wish you guys, more of you could have been there to see it, but we did have a good gathering there. I had several Feeder Flash gang members that were local. We had local producers. When's the last time you heard of a national trade organization have a convention and local producers came to it? Well, they did at U.S. Cattlemen's Association's meeting in Nashville. We had several local producers come in there, and I got to meet several of them. And in fact, I didn't know it, but evidently I've been eating breakfast with the Smiths there from Ripley, Tennessee, and I took a picture with them, and I like them very much, and just tickled to get to meet people that follow this report all the time. And I might tell you that I like my bacon crisp. So next time you guys sit down to breakfast with me, have that on my plate. But really nice gathering of people there. Everybody enjoyed themselves, got along, but we talked about stuff, real stuff. And we weren't worried about any kind of politics or any of that. We visited about issues. We did on some policy. We actually passed policy in the marketing committee that I participate in that supports minimum negotiated trade. So we needed to get full policy for that, and we did get that on the books. And then there were several other policy things. That there was people there that have built, have purchased, and are building smaller packing plants for more direct type local marketing. And they had several points of policy that they passed and had some good discussions there. And it was just really good to be there. But you know, last week's market, part of the reason that it was so volatile and part of the reason that we felt the wind come out of the sails was our choice boxes were down 662 on Monday of last week. That is a ton. I mean, it's not the biggest move you've ever seen because we've recently come out of COVID, so we saw the huge ranges there. But in normal times, that is a ton, and it scared the market a little bit. It's mostly because of your rib primal cut and the volatility there as we're ending your holiday purchasing, but we still got people wanting that product. So Wednesday we saw it come back $6.30 higher, and then we kind of filled our sales back up and made us feel a little bit better. But late here on Sunday as I'm recording this, I'm fearing the worst for my favorite college football coach, Mike Leach. There's word coming out that he had some pretty serious health problems, heart attacks and things like that on Sunday, and it doesn't look good for him, but we're praying for the best. He's a hardcore old school football coach, and I loved it when he was at Texas Tech and he had so much success there. I'm still a little bit mad at Texas Tech when I pay their light bill every month, but they are giving my middle daughter a good education there, so I guess I'll keep doing it. But after he left Texas Tech, he went to Washington State, and I had a good friend up there, Justin Schmier, that had recently graduated from there, and it was fun to follow him through Justin up there, and then after he left Washington State, he went down to Mississippi State, and I've got several friends that are alumni from there and enjoy visiting and following along with Mike Leach with them. But I fear he may never coach again, but I hope I'm wrong. Let's talk about your board for last week. December live cattle futures, Monday was down 12, Tuesday was down $1.67, Wednesday was up 37, Thursday up 50, and Friday up $1.25. That makes you feel good when you end the week good. December live cattle futures ended the week at 153.67. That was up 32 cents for the week. February ended at 155.55, down 32 cents for the week. Feeder cattle contracts for January, Monday was up $1.32. Tuesday was down $1.97. Wednesday was down 90. Thursday was up $2.57. And Friday up 45 cents with January feeder contracts ending the week at 183.92. Up 147 for the week. March ended at 185.10. Down 17 cents for the week. Corn futures, Chicago Board of Trade, ended December 6.34 3/4 cents a bushel. That was down just 1/4 cent a bushel. Beans 14.83 3/4. That was up 45 1/4 cents a bushel. Big gains on the beans last week. Your fat cattle trade up through Thursday of last week was only 29,000. We saw the bulk of the cattle end up trading on Friday after your packers come up to what people were wanting, but still at best it was only steady. So for the week we're still going to be steady to slightly lower, but at least our late sales were back up as high as they were the previous week, so that made us feel a little bit better. But your weighted averages are going to be cheaper than they were the previous week. Live sales of steers and heifers range from 153 to 158, kind of unevenly steady on the range, but your weighted average up through Thursday was 155.60, and that was down 82 cents from the previous week. But it is going to come back a little bit whenever we get Friday's information in there, and then I'll report that to you on our next feeder flash. Your dress sales, $2 lower. They're sure going to be lower. We didn't see them come back much. 243 to 247. Weighted average on dress steers, 246.85. That was down $1.70 compared to the previous week. Friday's sales, Colorado printed again. 1,400 head sold negotiated in Colorado at 157. Iowa, Friday's report showed 1,800 head confirmed, 7,800 head for the week, from 154 to 156.5. But I know they had some 157 in Iowa on Friday. It was just after the 2 o'clock deadline to turn that stuff in through NPR. So we're going to have quite a bit more trade come in. That happened on Friday. Dress sales on Friday at 246 in Iowa. Nebraska did have confirmed sales at 2,000 head and almost 20,000 head for the week. Live sales on Friday in Nebraska 156 to 158. That's more like what we're talking about. And dress sales 247. Kansas 6,300 head, 7,400 head for the week. 154 to 156, and a lot of that 155 to 156 in both Kansas and Texas. Your slaughter still running very respectful now. They've been talking about how they were going to start tailing off a little bit, and we had kind of a weak Saturday slaughter, and it was lighter than a year ago and a week ago, but still, you know, it hasn't sure fallen out of bed at all. 652,000 harvest last week. 11,000 less than the previous week, 16,000 less than the same week a year ago. Box beef cutout values, after being so volatile, after tanking and then coming back, your weighted average on all of last week's sales on choice cuts, 246.23. That was down $7.30 for the week because they did have significant volume sell whenever they dropped it there early in the week. But your late week quotes on Friday afternoon were not quite $2 higher than that at 248.93. So it did come back some. Select, your weighted average on all of last week's sales on select cuts, 220.37, down 542 for the week. And your late week sales on Friday afternoon were about $1 higher than that. Choice select spread on your weighted average was $25.86. Pretty decent movement of 696 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Talk about what else is going on. Actually, let's just go to your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction ended the week at 178.37. That was $1.62 higher for the week. And you know, we did have higher yearlings where we saw them. Cash feeders across the country last week. Your feeders were steady to $3 higher, which goes right along with that 162 higher on your weighted average or on your RTI. Calves were sharply higher in the plains, especially in places that have seen their winter wheat come on quite a bit here in the last few weeks, and guys are looking for those. And also more of the cattle are weaned now as we're getting later in the year. There's just more demand for them. They've had cold weather on them. It's not going to bother them anymore. There was some weakness noted on heifers up in your northern plains, and I think it's just because for the most part our heifer offering has been smaller and not quite as fancy as the steers, because a lot more producers have decided to keep back some heifers. So we're seeing that our heifer offerings are quite a bit smaller and are quite a bit plainer than the steers are. Talk about some big sales late in the week. How about Fort Scott, Kansas on Saturday? 2,000 head there or better. Feeders were $1 to $2 higher from your automated market report on Cattle Market Central. Calves were $5 to $12 higher. Look at these loads of 825 to 930 pound feeder steers. They bring from 178.50 to 185 in Fort Scott, Kansas. Your Zoetta stick-out sale of the day was Fort Pierre Livestock Auction in Fort Pierre, South Dakota on Friday. 5,700 head there. Steer calves were called steady to $4 higher, and heifer calves called $4 to $8 lower, and I think it has a lot to do with what I just talked about a while ago. But you look at some impressive quotes on your six-weight steers, six-weight steer calves in Fort Pierre. 1,804 head of them, average 640 pounds, with a weighted average price on all of them top quality steers at $206.68. Now on the light 7-weight steer calves, 421 head of them, average 718, with a weighted average price of $203.72. My goodness. Did notice they had some smaller groups of 6-weight replacement quality heifers that had kind of been sorted up just for that. Bring around $2 a pound or a little better, so that's awful good. Give you some individual quotes. How about Dunlap Livestock Auction in Dunlap, Iowa? They sell 78 head of steers, weighed 810 at $190 on Friday. Winter Livestock Auction in Winter, South Dakota. They sell 54 near-beer big steers, weighed 1,011 pounds at $182.50. My goodness. But most impressive quote that I saw anywhere late last week or over the weekend, your Macrocin No BS top quote for the day was Burwell Livestock Market in Burwell, Nebraska, at about 3,000 head on offer. But the best quote I saw was these 79 steer calves weighed 641 at $219.50. That's your feeder flash for Monday.